So let's look at the morphology. So I'm only going to do a short video on this because I've done other videos on Discus and I'm not entirely sure what I can say that would be different. And showing videos of the live fishes, I don't know how valuable this will be. So these are actually alcohol preserved. They're not, just dead or anything. And they did die of natural causes. The eyes are strange. I might go on to that because that is actually quite interesting. I've not noticed that before. But as we can see, these are actually Symphysodon tarzu. You can't really see on alcohol preserved specimens, but they do have those characteristic markings on that anal fin. So Discus are cichlidae. Are cichlids, basically. Even though they're so morphologically different, I think the closest relatives are either Pterophyllum or the Severums. Can't quite remember, sorry, but you can see this very unique morphological shape. Maybe in the marine world there's more similarities with fish that have evolved this disc body shape. And there's only 3 current diagnosed classified species of Discus. That's Symphysodon tarzu. There's also Symphysodon Discus, which is the heckles, and also Symphysodon aquafasciatus, which is your sort of, I think it's the blues. These guys are also called the greens. Sometimes you might see Symphysodon heraldi and is it axeroides sometimes mentioned, but they're no longer, well, they're not seen as sort of species that are currently accepted. But if we look at this morphology, these fishes are not adapted for high flow. They are not streamlined in the slightest, and part of this shape must be, I don't know, they look different. Their coloration is, I would say, they hide quite well. There's a bit of cryptic body shape with leaves and stuff, and their coloration breaks up their outline quite well, especially when stressed. They get that barring. So they have a dorsal fin, caudal fin, also known as tail fin, anal fin, ventral fin, ventral or pelvic fins, and also and these are the pectoral fins. So these are ones in this species of fish that will be used a lot for locomotion. So that's movement. I would say for turning, you've got the other fins will help it to an extent, but you don't really see. I would say maybe also for locomotion, these ones, the caudal fin. But I think Discus are quite interesting. They're only recently speciating. So Symphysodon tarzu, which is this one, is the most distant from aquafasciatus and heckles, which are molecularly extremely close. But they still have this sort of very characteristic body shape. It's difficult to say really because they are adapted probably for these sort of the flooded forest, the sort of low flow, nothing like rapids or anything, but they might be able to withstand higher flow than, say, especially those the species found in the Rio Xingu, but it's probably going to be found in lower flow areas than, say, some of the lorcas, leperinus and stuff like that. So one of the first things I'll note is we know they are detritivores. They're feeding largely on detritus, on algae, and you'll see that they have, if I can focus on it. Oh, it doesn't want to focus on this fish. Let's see if they'll change the background. Oh, they actually have quite a blunt face. So that doesn't show also they're not adapted for high flow. But you might be able to see that I find this a bit like a bony plate. And it reminds me of parrotfish. Where parrotfish feed on, I think it's sponges and stuff like this. These guys are able to sort of tooth off or bite off detritus, algae that's growing. So it's a different niche from lorcaris that largely rasp on it and sort of or delve into it. These guys are biting into it. I doubt they'd eat sponges, but sort of detritus microbes, algae, obviously a few insect larvae, but they're not adapted for reaching in. You can see they're sort of adapted for something different to what we expect. They're not insectivores, and we can kind of compare them to Pterophyllum, which is the angelfishes, which are who have much more pointed heads. They're social fishes, and a lot of their not so much maybe their body shape, but their coloration is about communicating with each other. This barring shows whether they're stressed, and also maybe it's part of their where the different species and populations have diversified. You'll see different markings and they can identify each other. They also have individual facial markings, I think, that Discus can identify each other as individuals, and so their morphology is about being social. Part of the shape might be just to be disruptive. When the predators look at them, they're seeing all these different round blocks, and it makes it difficult to know what's what, and maybe it makes them even look like a bigger animal than they are. When I look at these eyes though, I don't see, so it's a bit squishy, isn't it? They kind of look reflective. I don't know, let me see if I could get my phone light on it. That reflects a little bit. Maybe that's suggesting that they can live in darker regions of water, be able to catch more light. They've got very big eyes in general, which I know generally you're aiming for eyes in proportion because to avoid stunting, just use it as a measure. Very big eyes for their body shape, so maybe they're taking in as much light as possible. They're very visual fishes. They're communicating with colour, with shapes on their bodies, so not just the barring, and as it differs between species. So they need these big eyes to communicate. I'm not sure whether they do any other sort of communication. Along with this body shape, it's such a wide surface area for their, well, breeding behaviour that they're well known for. Discus produce, I'm going to say mucus milk sort of thing, and they care for their offspring by producing this mucus that the offspring will feed on. They obviously have this lateral line, so they can sense difference in water pressure, sort of flow, vibrations. I doubt they're electric fish, and you can see a bit of pitting in the head, which hints at this area is also a centre of senses related to what the lateral line does. In general, most animals have most of their senses at head, because you're gonna, as you're moving around, you're moving into environment, so you want to know what's in that environment as you're going. You're not gonna have the eyes on your back, because then you can't really see. You're seeing where you've been, not where you're going, and you can't identify predators so much. They have a very compressed organ, so I'd say when I dissected one, it was about that sort of space was devoted to all the different organs. This can make them, I guess, in captivity at risk of what goldfish are at risk of, but goldfish generally that was just from selective breeding, whereas these guys you could get that, I guess. They're relatively short-lived for maybe they're a bit like the chameleons of the fish world. Generally, I think the oldest I've heard about is they could potentially reach 10 years, but generally around sort of 3 to 5 years. And there's so many different variants. These being wilds, you can see that I find them a lot rounder in the head, whereas some like the Asian ones tend to be a little bit more flat, I guess. And then some of like Stenka a bit more pointed or angular. They do breed like like a lot of cichlids, so they breed on the surface. Pterophyllum, the angelfishes do it too, and they use this raspberry plate sort of thing to get at it. I'm not actually sure what it's made of, and I'm really curious, but it always looks a bit firm. It feels squishy there, but and you can see they're absolutely unique fishes. I get maybe they're a bit similar to batfishes in a way, and I don't do marines at all. I'm not interested in marine biology, but this just, it's interesting. The split split lateral line, you've seen so many fishes, and I just wonder the purpose of it. I don't know. And you can see they're generally adapted for that slower flow, slower lifestyle. But biologically these fish are amazing to study as a sort of short term looking at speciation. Even Symphysodon tarzu, this one has different variants. They go from Peru into, I think, into Brazil. They're found in, is it the Rio Tapajos? No. So these ones are actually Rio Nane, but they're found quite far out. They are, I call them the Peruvian species. As you go further in, you get Aqua fasciatus and Heckles. Heckles a bit more restricted areas, I think. This is from memory. I've got another video on the phylogenetics of Symphysodon, which is Discus. But they're just fascinating, the amount of diversity and populations. And I personally believe a topic that probably needs, I might have talked about it. So populations can be as distinct genetically and morphologically as different species, and that's why I think when it comes to whales, is it actually a good idea to cross these different populations? It doesn't add to them in a conservation sense. If you're crossing these different populations, they're not as valuable. You're crossing the genetics. It's like hybridizing. So it's kind of just interesting, especially like at the moment I've only got domestic Discus, I've got Stenker and some unknowns. Red covers, unknown as in unknown origin. But they're absolutely fascinating to look at, and they show the diversity of morphology in fishes. Even, I say cichlids don't have much compared to catfishes, but these guys are really cool, and you can see it's drying out a bit, hence the white patches. So they have to go back into the alcohol. But you can see there, big eyes, detritivore, algivore, whatever, omnivore. Not a carnivore, not an insectivore, but really brilliant to look at. Anyway, thank you for watching.